Alright, so we're still going through shows that did not make the list. Now we're talking about shows in the spring season, I believe. I'm pretty sure this is a spring show. I also just remember that when I was putting together these slides, I'm like, alright, I'm going to talk about Darling in the Franxx like as late as possible. So this was a Sword Art Online spinoff. Typically, I don't care about Sword Art Online at all. I know practically nothing about it. It just does not interest me. But the spinoff caught my attention because it was being made by Studio 3 Hertz that had made Flip Flappers a few years ago, which I really, really liked, and Princess Principal after that, which I also liked. So I thought, I might as well honor the faith that they've built up in me as a studio, but I couldn't really get into it. I don't know. So the premise is that it's like a gun game that they're playing. It's sort of like PUBG, I felt, like it's a lot of just creeping around a map and using tactics and stuff. I don't care about any of that. Whenever they started doing the actual combat, I didn't care. I kind of like the design of the main character, Len. The fact that she wants to be really cute in the game, so everything she has is pink. I can get into that. And her attitude was kind of fun too, but like I didn't really care about her that much, and she was the only character that was interesting. So I dropped this one pretty quickly. You should tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I couldn't imagine it getting too crazy. It seemed like they understood that the audience really liked the sort of like PUBG discussion stuff and like gun fetishism and stuff. So if they're courting that audience, they're not really gonna go too far outside of that. Is what I figured. It wasn't gonna start turning into flip flappers, so I gave up on it. This I watched like a little bit of. I had a friend who was staying with me who was super hyped about it, so I watched it with him. Um, I don't know. I was like, I remember the original pretty fondly. I remember thinking that that was really good. So I thought I would like this. I didn't get super into it. A lot of the times I was just trying to like remember what had happened in Steins Gate, like remember who these people are, what the heck everyone was talking about. Um, I was like kind of compelled as to what was going to happen more on like an emotional level, like you know, feeling bad for poor Ho and Kyoma here, hoping that he can recover to his previous wacky spontaneous self. But it was just like too much, and I felt like it was either gonna get bad or it was gonna get sad, and I wasn't really down for either of those. And what I've heard is that it more got bad, which is really sad for fans of Steins Gate. So I don't know. Like, tell me if I'm wrong. Again, tell me if you think this is actually super worth watching, and I'll try to make time for it. But it isn't a huge priority. This I started reading the manga of after it aired, and I actually really like it. I didn't think I would because it's like super het, but I actually like all of the characters a lot, and I think it's really funny, and it offers a seemingly very accurate and very cozy glimpse into the lifestyle of an otaku. So I kind of want to watch the anime. I've heard it's a pretty good adaptation, and I feel like they could have had a lot of fun with it. I'm picturing something kind of like Shaft's Nisekoi adaptation, like that level of spontaneity, I guess I would say, in the direction. But that's a pretty high bar. It's probably not that good. So I might check this out at some point, but I haven't watched it yet. Why is this here? Why isn't this on the list proper? It's mostly because I didn't finish it. And I don't know why I didn't finish it. So this is an adaptation of Tomorrow's Joe, which is a manga I really like, but also haven't finished, actually. But I really like the part that I read of it. I think it's an absolute classic that deserves all of the reverence that it has, which is why I was so shocked that they were making an adaptation of it that involved like robot boxing. I thought that sounded extremely stupid, but I didn't really understand the premise. And after I watched one episode, I was blown away and I was like, nope, they understand. They know what makes Tomorrow's Joe so good, and they're going to represent it in this really surprisingly very cool and exciting new form. And then I very excitedly watched like I think 5 or 6 more episodes, and then for no real reason that I can remember, I just stopped watching it. And I meant to go back to it. I had every intention to finish it. It just didn't happen. I don't know. I'll go back and finish it at some point. I think it's just too far out of sync with the sort of anime I normally watch. The emotions that it inspires in me are like I get fired up, you know? It's a really inspirational and motivating show. Very exciting, amazing combat direction, and like some of the best fight scenes I've seen all year. And it's like that's not what I want when I'm lying in bed watching anime is the last thing I do before I fall asleep. No, I just want something nice and fluffy with as little meaningful content as possible. No, I'm going too far now. I don't know. I'm just so ashamed that I didn't finish it. I feel like I'm a bum. Like this great show has been made to continue the legacy of a great manga, and I let it just kind of fall by the wayside. I don't know. It deserves better. It deserves better than an honorable mention. But that's all I can give it right now. And I do really suggest anyone out there to check it out. It's such a cool show. Yes, this is more in line with the sort of show that I can see myself watching. But I dropped this too. I dropped this like again maybe 5 or 6 episodes in, but I knew why I was dropping it. I was getting pretty bored. Um, so this is the Horse Girls. They're horses, but they're also girls. They're all named after real Japanese racehorses. I think that aspect is kind of fun. And I think to some extent they're like styled after them and their personalities or whatever, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just fun. And then they race, and like the winner of the race sings in like an idol performance. So basically, I feel like they just saw like 3 or 4 different money making ventures and decided to greedily just all stuff them together as quickly as possible. Okay, it'll be like Cancale, and that there's like a million girls and they're all named after real things, so it's easy to make them. And then it's a horse racing simulator because everyone likes that. Blow a bunch of money on fake horse gambling, and then also idols. Why not? You can sell records that way. Easy, done. Squish them all together, and it seems like pretty well done to kind of facilitate all of those goals. The characters are likable. The songs sounded fine. I think what was really missing for me was any sort of interest in the direction of the series, any like actual feeling of being engrossed in the animation. There was some nicely animated parts, but where it falls flat is the worst place that it could have fallen flat, which is the actual racing scenes. I really like watching racing in anime, and I really like when animation can convey a sense of speed very well, and especially with like things speeding up. Like perhaps my absolute favorite scene ever in terms of animation is in Rebuild of Evangelion 2.0 when they're racing to catch the falling angel. I think that scene is so cool. I've probably watched that like 20 times, just that scene alone. Uh, Mostly for the scene where he speeds up. Like, I don't know, something about it just grips me. Whereas this, which I had every reason to like because of that, kind of falls flat in that regard. So the scenes where I know I should be getting most hyped, I was just kind of bored and disappointed. I'm not quite sure why. They just couldn't catch me with it, you know? Like, just the horses were running. I was like, okay. They didn't, I didn't feel involved. This is Piano no Mori. I started watching it because it was a very critically acclaimed manga, and the adaptation was done by Gainax. Not that I really even know what Gainax is anymore, or if they exist in any sort of form that I would recognize them. At any rate, I still thought like, okay, they're definitely adapting this property because they really care about it and they really want to tell the story. Um, and by all accounts, it seemed like they were doing a pretty good job. Mostly, what I couldn't get over was the CG piano playing. I actually think it's pretty neat in concept that they can actually show them playing the actual piece that's being performed. Um, Only through CGI is that really feasible. Like actually animating by hand someone playing the piano like that is nuts. But kind of similar to this, it just sort of felt like the scenes that were being given the most attention, the scenes that were supposed to be kind of the climaxes, the ones that immerse you the most in the story, were kind of falling flat to me. I think mostly because of the CG. I just couldn't get my head around it. And other aspects of the presentation kind of seemed weird to me too. And I don't know, like the story in general seems intriguing to me. This tale of two boys that become good at piano and they're very different. It's kind of like an odd couple sort of thing. Like, sure, that sounds fun. That's definitely good enough to make me want to learn what happens. But I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. Maybe I'll try reading the manga. I'm still quite curious about it. And the manga is very critically lauded. But, like, good on Gainax, or Gaina, or whatever that company is, for adapting it, I think, in full. Like, it's up to, like, 80 episodes or something now. They just kept making it, which is really cool. I'm really happy when a studio decides to do that. That shows a lot of reverence for the work. So I don't know, maybe we'll come back to it under some circumstances, but probably it'll be reading the manga. Okay. Oh man, this one is a weird one. So this is the sequel to Amanchu, a slice of life anime that aired in 2016, I think, which I really liked. It's a nice, simple story of a girl that moves to a new town, makes a new friend, and through that new friend is introduced to the world of diving. It had lots of great Yuri stuff, of course. It had a nice mixture of kind of like standalone tangential episodic stuff and then this central storyline of her getting trained to dive and exploring the world of diving, which I thought was done in a really compelling and exciting way. The second season goes off the rails a little bit. At the beginning, it felt like a little more unfocused, just because the main character already has her diving license and going into the ocean isn't really a big deal, as big a deal anymore. And they still kind of had some stuff about her like progressing through her licenses and stuff that was still pretty compelling, but they really had to kind of like broaden it out with like more characters and even bigger tangential things. So all of that I was like, okay, that's fine. Where it started getting really weird is in the introduction of supernatural elements, which happens around halfway through the series and then becomes like a really major focal point. It's like really strange to me that they would do this, that for what I would expect is a solid like 7 or 8 volumes of the manga that they would have adapted by now, no supernatural elements whatsoever, and now suddenly supernatural elements everywhere? Like what? Like what happened in the manga? Like what happened? Did the mangaka explain why they decided to change all of this? I don't know. It's really weird to me. And it's not that I hate it on principle, the idea of supernatural elements. Certain aspects of it really reminded me of Flying Witch, which is a series I absolutely love, which again kind of marries the supernatural elements with like slice of life elements and really does an excellent job kind of equating the wonder at actual magic and supernatural things with the wonder that you can find in the natural world and with everyday things. I think that's a really awesome concept, and something that if you can convey in your series is really beautiful and enriching. But I didn't really get that so much here. It was more just like a hard veer into the other lane, such that it seemed like the diving and stuff was like irrelevant. Like, who cares about diving when you're being kidnapped by the spirit of Peter Pan to live in an eternal dream town or something? Anyways, Souls at Work, Hataraku Saibo, whatever it's called. I watched a bit of this. It's a really fun premise. It's literally about the cells in your body. It teaches you quite a lot about the body too. I think that is cool. The educational aspect I thought was fun. But then the actual like substantial meat of the show is like fairly generic, like battle shonen. You know, the viruses show up, our white blood cell hero fights them. It's actually very gory and violent. And the animation around it I thought was like whatever. So I don't know. I gave it a pass. I would love to see like a slice of life show set in the body, a slice of life show set in the body where like nothing bad happens and you just learn about how the body works. I think that would be really nice. But all of the actual like action and stuff, I don't know. It just didn't do anything for me. I think this is some sort of like One Piece spinoff. I heard the manga is hilarious and really good, and people have been telling me to read it. So I was kind of interested in watching the adaptation. And then a lot of people told me the adaptation was terrible, so I ended up staying away. I don't know. Were those people wrong? Let me know in the comments. Should I have watched this? Or should I just read the manga? Maybe we'll just read the manga. I still don't really know what any of this is about. They're diving? Okay. This, I kind of wanted to watch. You know, badminton is cool. I like playing badminton. I like competitive sports shows. It looked like it was taking itself very seriously, which is hit or miss for me, but the animation and stuff looked pretty impressive. So, again, I had every reason to watch this show. Um, I think the main reason I didn't is just that it seemed a little too serious and intense, and I wasn't just up for it at the time, but maybe at some point I'll go back to this. Again, please let me know your thoughts on any of these. Which ones did I really do myself a disservice by missing? I started watching. I think I watched 2 episodes, and I was fairly impressed. I think they did a pretty good job of the adaptation. Of course, with a series like this, so I don't know. I don't really want to spoil too much about what the show is. But they definitely had to think outside the box a little bit if they were going to do a good adaptation. Because in manga form, doing horror, I guess that's a bit of a spoiler, but doing kind of horrific, thrilling elements is a lot harder because you don't have like a lot of the tools that an audiovisual medium has, like sound effects and hard jarring cuts. Like in manga, you kind of have to make your own cuts. And like shock horror is a lot harder when you give your reader time to just sit and contemplate the image rather than just kind of like flashing it at them. So I knew that to like successfully adapt this manga, they would have to use kind of like a different arsenal of tools. And I expected them to kind of make it a more conventional horror by using these sort of effects in the same way that horror series do. And for the most part, they did, and they did like a really good job of it. But it seems that it has come at the cost of what I thought were the most compelling elements of the manga, which is like really kind of specific details about how things are framed, how things are presented, what occurs on like one page, and then what'll occur on like the following page. If you watch my videos about this series, they're largely kind of about those sorts of details. And then also like the overarching plot. For me, the most interesting parts are more about like the kind of information, if that makes sense, like moments of revelation between characters, having these crazy like anti-epiphanies where suddenly you just misunderstand the situation in a flash. Like examining it through that lens, I found really interesting, and all of that stuff. I think it could have been retained in the anime, but it's like really difficult to um, carry over those sorts of effects from a medium that lends itself much more to kind of like contemplation and slow study. So I don't know. It just didn't really work for me as an anime. But I have every reason to think that it does work in general as an anime. It's more just that I'm not really into a lot of those sort of horror tropes that I talked about. Um, and and I don't know. And like given that I already know the plot, like that aspect is a little less compelling. And it's I don't know. But it was still well done. There were still some scenes that I was genuinely creeped out, even already knowing what was going on, which is cool. So I would check it out. If the vague genre-based description I gave of it makes you interested, then I would follow that interest. This I've heard is quite fun. It's about the titular Chio-chan trying to get to school, and then things go wrong around every corner. I've heard it's like very wacky, kind of slapstick humor. Again, I had every intention to watch this, and I just didn't. This I watched. I don't know. I think it has a lot of potential. It could have been a lot better. I'm reading the manga now, and I think the manga's quite good. And there's certain aspects of it I really like. Of course, the Yuri thing is A+++. And I really like this character, Kanata. She reminds me of Saki quite a bit, where in most scenes and like slice of life type scenes, she's like very kind, very appreciative, like calm and innocent and happy. And then but with kind of like an undercurrent of tragedy, with kind of this sort of misplaced feeling of loss. Again, all very Saki-esque. And then on the volleyball court, she turns into like a demon. This is from an early match they play where Kanata's strategy is revealed to be just making this girl like wear herself out by making her like run to the far corners of the court over and over and over again until she's too exhausted to return the ball anymore. And Kanata is just taking like this satisfied justice feeling of delight watching this girl like pant and collapse. Like she really feels like the villain in the match, which I think is pretty cool. And again, shades of Saki. I think Saki does this so excellently. So I think the series as a whole has a lot of potential too, as they kind of expand on these characters more and they get better at volleyball and things become even more exciting and hype. The problem is in this adaptation, the hype is missing from the volleyball itself. Now I've heard of this little show called Haikyuu that people seem to like, which has apparently very, very good and exciting volleyball direction. I think the producers of this show should probably watch that show and try to figure out what they're doing. And the answer is probably spend a lot more money on animation than we have available. But the ball, it just moves so slow in this. It's like every shot, there's a scene of the ball just like slowly falling and rotating over the net. And there just isn't a dynamicism to it. There isn't like a thrill you get from watching it. The direction around it just seems like kind of simplified and phoned in. It's always kind of the same few shots, the same few shot structures. Nothing that really shocks you in terms of like suddenly something happens, you know? And even Saki, which is about Mahjong, which is a turn-based tile drawing game. Will still have moments that blow you away just in their presentation, not even in the content of what is happening, but just in the presentation of Saki drawing the tile, someone spinning their hand over and then slamming it down, like Hisa flicking the tile up in the air, knocking the rest of their hand down, and then slamming the tile down with it. Like, the way those things are depicted, the energy and the feeling of kinetic movement within them, it's really what makes the show. So, I don't know. It shows like this live and die based on the way they present the fundamental activity. And here it just kind of came up short. This I wanted to watch. The premise is great. It like takes place back in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. And is about this guy who meets this girl, and this girl is just unfathomably good at video games. And then they kind of just do like, I guess I would call it like a survey of arcade games of that era, discussing, and they're real games and real strategies, discussing like the way you would get high scores in them, good methods of play, all of that. It's very charming to me. They use actual footage of the games too, which I think is really neat, that they went out and actually recorded footage that matches the narrative. I think that's fantastic. Again, every reason to watch this. I watched a bit of it. I really liked it, and I just didn't finish it. So maybe sometime. This I started watching, and I realized that I was meant to have watched the movies, that there was like a bunch of characters I didn't know, and they were talking about stuff I didn't understand. And I felt like it probably wasn't a big deal, that I could probably like catch as catch can and figure out what was going on, but you know, that's not me. I want to be a completionist. I want to do everything in the proper order. So I've postponed this until I watch the movies. Who knows when that'll be. It's not like a huge priority. I liked season 1 and season 2 quite a bit, but There's other things I like more. This I wanted to watch because the director, well, definitely the writer, but I think he also directed it, is the guy who did Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer and Spirit Circle and a bunch of other really fantastic manga. So I was really curious to see like what kind of mecha show would he make. Um, Character designs look fun. This mech design looks fun, kind of Gurren Lagann-y, but also cat-like. Lots of reasons to think it would be good, and then I just didn't watch it. I didn't hear too much about it afterwards. I don't know how it was generally received or anything. I think a lot of people just didn't know about it. But I don't know. I hope it's good. I'd like to go watch it at some point. So that's it for summer. And then we'll start into fall in the next video with this. What's going on with this?